Still gonna listen to some music while people come in. Pick up your phone so it don't vibrate on the table. Or not. You're not gonna do it. Thank you so much.
See what that is?
No, I
That
don't.
means it's silent and it's not vibrating. You see that? That no blue? That's what that means.
I don't have a Samsung, so I don't know how y'all's phones work.
I've already done it, is what I'm saying.
Hi, people. Say hi.
Hey,
This is a little married folk banter because Aaron's cell phone is bound to go off during the live and it makes this incredibly loud buzzing sound. So I was just trying to double check to make sure that we weren't going to have no issues.
I've already turned
They
it
can't
off.
see it. You see, it's light.
And she's on.
I'm not on your nerves. It takes more than that to get on your nerves. Hi, people. Hello. Welcome, welcome.
Are you gonna sing everything?
Yes, that's how I start my life. Hello. Yeah. And everybody coming on is very familiar with how I start my lives. So
I'll be.
don't be rude.
Hello.
Hello. Don't be rude.
Just a mess.
Don't be rude. Hello, guys. Welcome to this week's installment of Thursday with Jamila. We're going to go ahead and get started. I want to start with a recap from part one so that when we go into part two, it's a building block. And as you all know, I am real big on application. And so it's not enough to just have a conversation. Like, what are we doing with the information that we are receiving? How are we putting it into practice so that we are actually becoming more holistic in our approaches when we have conversations? So, for those of us who were not present for the first part of Life After Breakup, we talked about how we become what the relationship requires and how we sometimes need to be cognizant of that so that we don't evolve into people that we cannot maintain, right? I gave you guys a very specific definition of that, and I saw you guys commenting and resharing that, and so I love that. And so let me go back to that particular quote, if we can find it in the notes. See that song? You like that song? That's good, huh? It says, what can I say? Where is it? I'm going to try to remember it off the top of my head. I said, do not become who you cannot sustain both mentally and physically. It was something along those lines, but we should not evolve into people. Never become who you cannot strengthen, support mentally and physically, because that will only lead to resentment. And why did I say that? Because when we evolve out of a version of ourselves that is not authentic and is not true to our core, we begin to resent the facade that we portray, and then we begin to point blame on other people when honestly you made a choice to become that person, whether it was well intended or not. And so we have to be cognizant of what we choose to become for the sake of while we're in relationships, because as I mentioned before, there should always be room for the authentic you in any relationship that you are involved in, be it personal or professional. You should be able to bring yourself to the table, and there should be space for who you are. What do you think about that?
I agree. I think you just don't lose yourself, because even with saying that, I still think there are times where you become a version of yourself, but as long as you know that, like, you're not trying to be something that you're not, you understand, because there's some professional arenas where you have to navigate and not necessarily be fully out there because they wouldn't necessarily be able to handle it. But I still think that even in knowing that, you go into the table, you go there with the intentions of knowing, okay, this is what I'm doing, and I know that I'm doing it, and 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 is going to achieve the goal that I wanted to achieve, and we're going to move on to the next thing. And so it's not a permanent thing that you sit in.
Do you think that that is always possible? Do you
No,
think
no, no, no,
okay?
no. It's not always
Okay,
possible.
all right. So I just, just thinking about it in that way, like, is it possible to have multiple versions of yourself and sustain them long term for?
It's not anything that you're going to try to sustain for a long period of time because, of course, like you said, it wouldn't be healthy to do that. But the ability to move in and out of situations, in and out of circumstances, in and out of just different places, I think is important for you to be able to navigate that. And so sometimes you might not be able to be fully everything that you bring to the table might not be able to be fully shown in those moments, but just don't lose yourself in it.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. The other part that we had mentioned, just for the recap, I said, you giving of oneself should never lead to a false identity, right? There are pieces of you that you give there. I mean, it's a symbiotic relationship. So when we're giving, there should be a taking and there should be a return on investment. So you can't give to the point of depletion for the sake of, because that's very unhealthy. And I think a lot of people do it because they have hopes that my gift will be reciprocated in the same manner. And you have to remember, people can only give from their capacity. So whatever they have to offer is what they have to offer. And we cannot always assume that because I can give 10, someone else can give 10. They may not have the capacity for that. So it's important to really ensure that you are doing some checks and balances when it comes to the type of relationship that you choose to voluntarily subscribe to. Okay. And again, this is not all relative to just romantic relationships. We're talking about when you pick jobs, when you pick friends, when you pick associations, whatever it is that you choose to be a part of. You have to realize that you're giving of yourself and you're giving them one of the most valuable things that you can never get back, and that is your time. And so if you're going to be invested in any of those things, ensure that there will be a return on your investment. Okay. And the one final part that I want to go back to was the value of you is not going to be hinged on your doing. Your authentic self is already within you. You came here with a design and a makeup, and your doing doesn't necessarily give you worth. It is a choice to be who you are. And I think what happens sometimes is we get lost in the fact that we do that we begin to become identified by our works and not our true identity. And when we are not in a position to fulfill the works, we start to feel less than, or we have to now figure out, well, how do I shape a new identity because I'm no longer in a position to do the works?
Yeah,
Can you identify with that?
yeah, that makes sense. Because yeah, sometimes we're identified like she said. If I can no longer do what I've been doing, then what is my value? Because you put so much effort and energy into creating an identity behind that thing, that now without it, who am I? And that's a tough journey to have to actually walk through, but it's necessary because but one it only takes, hopefully it only takes a one or two of those times for you to recognize that my identity doesn't need to be tied to this specific thing, but who am I holistically, so that when all is said and done, whether this stays or whether this goes, I can still move on and be secure in who I am.
So I would ask you to dig into that just a little bit, just so that we can give a real life example of where you found yourself in a situation where you were identified by works, where your identity, a lot of how you were identified or referred to, was tied to your works, and then you were no longer doing the works. How did you pivot, and how did you find a healthy way to re-identify or reaffirm yourself?
I think just in those, because my life is identified by works. I do a lot of works, and I do a lot of things that I feel like I work hard, right? So let me take real estate as an example. It's helped me quite a bit because real estate is a turnover kind of job, right? You're hired and fired, literally, right? You're hired to either buy a house or help someone buy a house or help someone sell their house. After that transaction is done, generally you don't meet them again another 5 or 10 years later, right? If you've done a great job, then they remember you and may come back. But so you have to, the work you put in on this job, you can't sit in that, right? You have to identify, okay, what is the next opportunity? What is the next moment? And there are some that don't go like you planned for them to go. But you still have to pick up the pieces. You still have to learn from those opportunities or learn from those situations and then move on to the next one. And so real estate in and of itself has helped me quite a bit to be able to compartmentalize kind of the works and then be able to identify, okay, what's the positive here, what's the negative here, learn from both of those things and then move on to the next one.
Yeah, I would agree. I absolutely know. That has probably been one of the harder things for me to do. Because for so long, when you're identified by one particular set of criteria, and then you've been disassociated from that, and you've got to find a way to navigate in the absence of that, especially if it's something that you enjoy or a group of people that you enjoyed or whatever, and there was fulfillment in it, and then you're no longer operating in that. That is a challenge. And for me, I think it was more of an emotional pivot that I had to commit to, because when I'm in something, I'm in it and I'm fully invested and I give from like the core of me. And so when I can no longer do something that I have invested in, whether I fully enjoyed it or not, there was an investment made. And so when I go back to the pile of works, I want to be able to take away something that still proves that, you know what, it wasn't for naught. And I don't know that I've always, just be completely transparent, I don't know that I've always done a great job of it, because sometimes it's like, well, how come I'm not seeing a more favorable outcome from this? And I mean, as of late, some of what I've seen is, I might not see the immediate, but somewhere down the line, something may be said, or like something, it'll come back and you're like, oh, well, it wasn't for naught. Like I can speak to, I worked for an organization for 10 years in HR, and every day it was like, hair on fire. Like I would be so upset. And when I said that I was leaving, it was just like, oh well, whatever, no big deal. But then like maybe a few months after I left, I was still hearing about, whoever worked in this role did an immaculate job. We can actually go in and still find pertinent information that we need to be able to cleave to. I still have people reaching out to me saying, man, I miss you. Like you really helped me navigate through some of these things. And if it had not been for you, I wouldn't,
Right.
know how to do it. And so, but in the thick of it, I was just like, they could care less that I'm leaving. Like I've committed, I've built these structures, I've done this work, and it doesn't seem to matter. And so I'm saying that to say to someone who may be listening, you may not always see it in real time. And I would just caution you to just throw it all away as if your works were void, or they had no merit, because I am learning, someone is always watching, and it may not always be who you assume would be, but there's someone who's always looking. And when the next opportunity presents itself, you want to be in a headspace to be able to be a glad recipient of the next one, and not a bitter recipient still harboring like the nastiness of what maybe you had to walk away from.
Yeah, I think there's I've been working on this book for a while, and it's called When the Gift of Giving Leaves You Empty.
Empty.
Right. And one of the subjects that I'm focusing on, or still trying to focus on, is don't second guess the sacrifice. And because it's easy to probably get caught up in the moment where I begin to second guess the work that I put in. Was it successful? Was it valuable? Because now at this moment, it doesn't seem like it was, like it produced anything. Because if it ends this way, then what really was it before? You know, did it have any value before? And that thought process, don't second guess the sacrifice, helps you to come to a place where you don't begin to resent the work that you did put in and the time that you did put in or the seeds that were planted. Is because Jamila and I were talking the other day, right? We pass on our way to we pass it all the time, a cornfield, right?
I was
And
hoping you were about to bring that up.
in the cornfield, the seeds are planted, right? And the corn grows up and it's tended to and it's harvested. Depending on how early in the season that corn was planted, it was harvested and cut down, but the rain is still going. And then when that corn is cut down, additional corn falls to the ground. So it also is then planted in the same season. So what happens is some of the corn grows up even after it's been harvested. Additional corn still begins to regrow even in the same field, in the same season, after you've made a harvest. So when I say don't second guess the sacrifice, sometimes even after you've harvested and you've moved on, additional seed has already dropped and still produces another harvest. So there's an opportunity if we don't get caught up in that self doubt and bringing ourselves down and falling into that emotion of, well, I don't feel like it was successful, or why did I put all of this work in and I'm not seeing any return on it. There's a return. You just don't second guess it, because sometimes you can miss what's growing in the field
Yeah, and I
after
would
you've left.
say, it's hard to see what's coming when your head is down. And so, and when I say your head is down, I'm referring to the rumination process, where we are really just kind of like down in the weeds about the scenario, and we continue to replay and we continue to regurgitate, what it is that was wrong or how it was bad, and we start replaying and reliving that over and over and over. And our head is down, and you can't see what's coming because you are so focused on how it failed according to you, according to your standard. You can't see what's coming. But the moment you come up from air, it's a lot easier to see the sun when your head is up than when it's down. And so in the part about that conversation that I enjoyed the most was the unintentional planting of the seed. And as we were talking about, when they're harvesting the corn, there are seeds that fall, right? And they're not intentionally planting all of those seeds. Some of that was an unintentional planting, but they made it into good soil, right?
Right.
And so if we go back to the Bible, we talk about the seeds that fall and all of that. Like sometimes there's a seed that falls, an unintentional seed that falls in good ground. And if it's falling in good ground and it's watered and all of that happens, then that seed is able to sprout up. And when we were discussing it, we talked about how, harvest, a lot of us, we start to turn flips, and in some instances, folks are running around churches and hallelujah and dancing behind it's harvest time. And I'm a country girl, so I'm not a country girl. Well, let me correct. I was trying to say I am a city girl, okay? And we walk to the grocery store. We do not walk to any farm grounds, okay? That's Aaron's job. I don't do that. But it's okay. I fixed it. But if you have to harvest something, that's hard work. Like you have to go out there and pluck things up. There's a lot of sweat in that. And I think that's really why they say the harvest is ripe, but the laborers are few. Because when you got to get out there and you got to pluck that up and you got to pull all that in, that's hard work. Yes, what you're getting is something to be rejoicing about, but the process of getting it
Yeah, harvest is the
is
hardest season,
hard.
guys.
But the thing is, even in the hard work, what's happening is there's seed that's falling. And so I'm saying that to say, no matter what the investment was, where there was hard work, there was seed being planted. And so you've got to understand that what's planted in proper soil is going to yield a return.
A return.
But it is when we are planting and our seeds are being thrown on thorns and being choked out. And that is the part relationally that I sometimes want us to pay attention to, because even when we're casting seed, be mindful of where you cast your seed, because if it does land on the thorn, it is going to be choked out.
I, I I think a lot of this ties into expectation, guys. You know, because I believe sometimes we go into situations with expect unreal expectations of the soil. Okay, and you you've seen the writing on the wall. You've seen what situations happened beforehand. It was clear to you how it operated before you even got into it, right? And so then you go into it with expectations that you're going to be able to now recultivate this land, that you're going to be able to add some type of fertilizer in your own, your own ability. You're going to be able to fertilize this land in a way that nobody else has, and you're going to be able to cultivate it and bring up some stuff. And so you begin to plant seeds into it with expectations that you may. Sometimes you just have to see the soil for what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, like I think some of us have an unrealistic expectation that we're the fixer. We can fix people. We can change people. We can, if that's who they are, the only way they're changing is by a voluntary pivot, not us. And that I think is hard. I'm gonna say I think that's hard for you, because you really choose to see people at their best at whatever state they're in. They could be at their worst, they could be middle ground. But Aaron is going to choose to see the best of that person at all costs. And so, and I love that. I think it is great. Sometimes I want to snatch him up, just hey, that's not realistic. Come on over here. But you do choose to see people at their best at all times. And sometimes you miss the writing on the wall because you want so badly for them to be what you know they have the potential to be. But it's a choice that sometimes people have to make, and they don't choose to be that person.
Yeah, one of the things though that is you get 110 from me out the gate, right? And so if you're allowed in, then everything that I have is available to you. My resource is available to you. Now, one of the things that I've learned in doing that is to be poured out and not emptied out. Okay, because there's a difference. And the pouring I can control, the empty you just go in and take what you want. And so there's a difference in now my learning in those situations, my learning across those situations has begun to shift my thought process that, Aaron, it's okay to be you, be authentically you, right? And not second, not be somebody you're different, because then it's going to affect me in a way if I'm not that, right? But one of the things that I have learned is to be poured out and not emptied out, right? And so it's a choice that I make going into the situation. And even though I see the best in a person, there does come a point in the situation where I'm no longer breathing life back into it. If it dies, I've learned to let it die. And so that's one of the learnings that I've gotten is a lot of the sometimes past I would keep it on a respirator, right? And keep breathing life back into it. But there's sometimes now I've learned how to just allow it to die, because to everything there's a season.
There is. And I like the point that Jonathan made here. You said that you have to rotate the seed type every few years to ensure the soil stays viable for producing fruit. And if we put that into context as it relates to necessary endings, like sometimes it's just not the season for that rendering of that gift or that talent or that career choice or that relationship. Like sometimes you just gotta know when it's time to not engage. And I think that, that it comes with trial and error, because none of us get it perfect 100% of the time. But I think at the point when we make a decision to even acknowledge our own shortcomings relationally, like, and be honest about the fact that, you know what, I'm in a different season. Like I talked about this a while ago, and it talks about like the seasons of relationship and understanding where you are relationally in relationships. And you have to know it from a personal and then a collaborative effort, because when you actually take note of where you are in the season, then you actually honor the relationship better because you serve the relationship based on its need for that season. But I think that takes emotional intelligence. Like, you have to be locked in to the people that you choose to do life with and honor their season. And there's a level of selflessness that's required, because it doesn't matter at what level you are in relationship with people. You have to honor that life that you're choosing to sow into at whatever level that relationship requires. And just from the application piece, I wanted to walk through a couple things here, and I'm gonna have Aaron chime in from the male perspective. So at the point where you have called it quits, in whatever the field is, you have to acknowledge that you're losing a part of you're losing a part of yourself in that. Like, there was an investment made in that relationship, and when you call it off, it's like you lose a piece of you. So you need to be mindful of that. You need to be honest about how you feel about it. And you can't be delusional. You can't just be like, I'm unbothered, it didn't faze me. That's typically not true. The separation causes some type of emotional response. And it's okay to feel what you feel. But I think at the point where there is a separation, I think there needs to be a period where you unplug. And in this very accessible era, that looks like unfriend, unfollow, block, delete. It looks like limiting all of what you choose to post to prove that you're okay. Because I see a lot of that happen to you. All of a sudden, I'm good. Every post is about how great life is. And it just made you may need to take a minute to unplug and really feel what you feel. And you need to be able to do that around people who will allow you to feel, but will not allow you to stay stuck. Right? Like, and I think women sometimes, because we tend to be a little bit more emotionally charged, this part of the process, it takes a while. I feel like sometimes you find yourself saying the same story over and over until you get past how it makes you feel emotionally. But you should just be cognizant of who you decide to be that vulnerable with. Because not everybody knows how to contain things in a vault. And what you say in rage, or what you say in anger or frustration, I'm one that I really swear by Brene Brown's braving acronym, and the V stands for the vault. And it really talks about, like, in those moments where you're having to kind of navigate through that, there are some things that are going to probably be said that need to remain in the vault. And it's not for people to come back and use that as daggers or ammunitions later down the line, but it is to understand that in that moment, that is what she was feeling. It may not go beyond that moment, but she needed to spew that out, because it's better out than in. So you've got to get the vinegar out. So get it out, but get it out with trusted sources who you know tomorrow not gonna be like, oh, remember when you said da, 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 da? Like, that is so unhealthy, and it happens so many times because we're entrusting information with people that have not shown themselves to be trustworthy to keep it in the vault.
Yeah.
No, that's it. Okay.
I mean, yeah. I mean, what else do you add to that? Could be honestly, yeah. I don't have anything to add to that one.
High five, what?
Yeah,
I got it. Got it right. All right. So the other part, I alluded to it earlier, but I'm bringing it back up again because I'm a psychology major, and I really understand how rumination can cause so many problems. And if you've ever incurred trauma at any point in your life, this is the avenue whereby you really truly relive it like a movie in front of you, and every emotion that you felt, every pain that you felt, it comes right back to the forefront. And so we really got to be cognizant of our rumination. And so, what you choose to meditate on is what you choose to shape your realities around. Okay, so at some point you've got to shift the narrative. And when I was talking about this, when I was preparing this first time, Aaron and I started joking about it. And he told me I need to do my 5 minutes. So one thing that my grandma used to tell me when I was young, she would say, okay, if something made you mad one time, then you can be mad for 5 minutes. But the next time that thing comes up, then you need to take away a minute and only give it 4. And she would tell me, like, the same thing should not hold your attention for the same amount of time each time it comes up. Right. And so the detoxing thing, I was saying, okay, so if it is something that makes you angry and you really need to deal with it, give yourself an allotted time in the day. You compartmentalize that time, you deal with it, but you got to shut it off. When your time has exhausted, you have to shut it off and you have to shift your meditation. Is that easy? It requires discipline. It requires discipline and an accountability partner. Your best friend should not always let you go on and on and on about the same thing and you have not taken any strides to get better. Your mentor, your whoever you vent to, whoever your trusted source is, they should not allow you to continue to keep going there. Because the longer we spend doing here, the less time we have to get to the next thing. Yeah. And I think, and I was asking Aaron, I was like, why do you think, in your opinion, because I feel like women take longer to pivot. I feel like we're just a little bit more emotional and heart focused, that it takes us a little bit longer. But I feel like men can pivot a little bit faster when it comes to these kind of scenarios.
I don't. I think the pivot is more of a. I don't know that we pivot and get over it. That's I don't think that's really what it is.
Okay.
I think there's a realization that I can't stay here, because if I stay here, I'm gonna get stuck here, and the emotions of it are not going to help me.
Okay.
But there is something. There's maybe a longer term response to it.
Okay.
So whatever this situation. Whatever I learned from this situation, I may be more cautious in the next relationship because of that.
Okay.
So that piece may work with me over time, and may even become a because I didn't fully deal with it or didn't really get it out over here. I, like Jonathan said, we put it in this compartment, and so because it sits right here, I can go over here and I can work and I can focus and I can do this, and I know that I can see fruit here, so I'm gonna work here because I know there's fruit there.
Do we ever come back to the thing that's in the box?
Sometimes, but sometimes we don't. Not until we're forced to. And so sometimes we'll come back to it when we're forced to come back to it because a trigger happened, or because we ran into another situation that forced us to deal with it, or not.
Or not. Okay.
And so it could begin to affect our mood, or affect our responses, or affect our temperament. Okay. And so at the end of the day, I'm still going to push. I'm going to look for the opportunities where I can see fruit.
Do you feel like society has shaped that response? Because from where I sit, I often find that the male is not given the space to be or have as much of an emotional response, because they are challenged with, you have to be this, you have to show up this way, you've got to provide, you got to make sure you've got this, you got to be strong, you got to do this. And I feel like strong has been depicted as you get over it and you move and you hustle. And vulnerability is not necessarily considered strong when it comes to the characteristic of what a man has to be in society.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of see that across the board, though. I mean, it's just not. That's not anything that's glamorized, or that's or that time and space really isn't given. Okay, we're moving on to the next thing. We can't be down for too long, because then what? Yeah, right. We don't have the time to. Right, we got to go on to the next thing. The bill still got to get paid. The house note is still coming up.
Right.
The car note still got to get paid. Right, the kids still need to go to school. Still, so forth and so on. And so we compartmentalize that thing. Let me put it over here, and let me keep pushing over here because this still has to happen.
Okay.
This still has to work. Okay. And so if you can find a safe space that allows you or affords you the opportunity without trying to force you to deal with it, but allows you to deal with it in your own time and space, a safe space like you spoke of, that allows you to be able to share it and not be not have to feel like you have to close it in, because if the more you feel like you have to close it in, the more you're not going to share.
Yeah, that's
okay.
Fair.
You're not going to share it, because if I have to get out to the emotions of this thing, that's going to take too much. That's going to take more energy out of me than what I have to give it.
Okay.
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 And so I think some of the times it's just the person you're connected to, ask them to just be ready when you're ready. Because sometimes you're just not ready to talk about it at that moment. You're not ready to unpack it at that moment. And you may unpack one shirt at a time.
Yeah, and I would say then to the person who is being asked to be available when they're ready, make sure that you have the emotional fortitude for their truth. Because I think sometimes we tell people, I'll be here to help you unpack this or walk through this when you're ready, but we actually don't have the emotional capacity to even hear what they may or may not say.
Because what if you were the problem?
What if?
So to be able to hear that this compartmentalized item I haven't been able to deal with is because I can't get you, who I'm connected with, to see that what you did hurt me.
Yeah.
And so if you don't feel like that's a safe place, then you leave it in the compartment and you move on.
You do. And then you actually, it spills over into your dealings with everyone. And I think that's sometimes the part that we really don't address. Like we feel like I'm only behaving this way toward that person, or this scenario really is only showing itself in this setting. And that's not true, because anything that's unresolved within you, it shows in your mannerisms, it shows in your temperament one way or another. It may not always be the extreme version of the expression, but it's there. It's an undercurrent. And so you have to be really intentional on how you choose to address things. If you're not to the place where you can say it, okay, I'm an advocate for journaling. I do believe you have to have self-expression in one way or the other, and not just moving into another facet to stay busy. You have to address the thing that is beneath the surface. You cannot just decide I'm burying my head in this or that. Like, you got to deal with it in some way. And even if it's just 5 minutes at a time, one sentence at a time, however you choose to, just make sure that you get it out. Yeah. Okay. So, and after that, so we've gone through, no matter the circumstances, give yourself the freedom to feel how you feel, unplugging and not making it a dissertation on all of your social media handles, finding a safe place to be able to spew it out. And then something that may seem trivial, but is so incredibly important, return to doing the things that you enjoy doing, that being in that organization or in that relationship did not allow you the space to do. You got to get back to doing those things, because those are the things that keep you vibrant. Those are the things that keep your stress levels down. And if we think about the pandemic, so many people said, if I had more time, I will be doing X. And then when we had nothing but time, do we actually go back to doing those things? I know I failed. I was supposed to read like 5 books. They are all sitting on my nightstand. Like, I'm halfway through all of them, right? But like, get back to the things that you said made you feel complete. Get back to the things that made you feel whole. And when you're back in those environments, naturally you're going to be surrounded by people who enjoy those things as well, and you might find your next tribe. You might find your next coffee buddy, who knows. But if you never get back out to doing those things, and you stay in a sulking, and you stay in a sunken place, you're limiting your opportunity for exposure to those things.
I mean, one of the things that Adam and God had a particular time of day where they met, right, in the garden. And it was a specific place. And so one of the things that I've had to learn in the journey is to identify, where's my meeting place with God, where I can, if nobody else hears me, he does. If I can't share this with anybody else, then I can with him. Right. And for me, water, sitting out on a boat, fishing.
Now, I love water, but I don't want to go fishing, y'all. He don't take me to no water.
Sitting on a bench next to running water. Those kind of things I've identified as a safe place for me. Even when I can't find one in people, when I can't find one in any individual, God gives me a prayer closet that's not in this house, but it's outside, identifying, because what he shows me He shows me in nature. God speaks to me in natural things. And he shows me that if I'm doing this and I'm doing this and I'm doing this, and it happens like clockwork, then surely who are a little lower than me, I'm going to do the same thing for you. And so he teaches me and shows me in ways that gets me out of how people will respond.
Yeah.
And he shows me how he responds.
Yeah.
And so that allows me to get into a place where I can move on. I can decompartmentalize this thing and give it to somebody who's able to handle it. And then I could come back home a different person.
Yeah.
I can approach that situation differently. I can respond differently. I can hang this issue up because I'm trusting that God's going to take care of it.
Yeah.
And so AJ asked the other day, what is a prayer closet? I said, it's wherever you meet with God. It's not, it doesn't have to be that physical prayer closet.
Yeah.
It's where's those opportunities where you can sit down and you can commune and you can have the time and the space to be able to be strengthened in whatever situation you're in.
And those around you who are in relationship with you should be able to know where that space is for you, and they reverence it. Like, to Aaron's point, like AJ brought up, what is a prayer closet? And then he was like, well, and then he asked me, he was like, well, you always... Yo, my child is a mess. He said, well, you always in your prayer closet and you always telling me to get out. Now, I don't know if you always in there praying.
She be in there hide sometimes.
I do hide sometimes. It's my safe place, okay? It's my secret place. Yes, I do hide in my space. But I mean, the people who you are in relationship should be able to identify that place for you because they'll reverence it as well. Because sometimes it's not always in what you say. When you are in relationship with people, sometimes they understand what's not said and they know how to respond and reverence that. Now, I'm not saying...
And if they don't, tell them.
Tell them. It's okay to tell them. And it's like, and I'm not saying that we have to be mind readers. You know what I mean? But like you should have a space, and people who are in relationship with you should reverence that space. Okay. So when we get back to doing the things that we love and we're recommuning and we're getting our life back in a sense, I would encourage you now to resist the urge to obsess over what went wrong. It's not going to produce any good fruit for you. Okay. As we mentioned in the previous episode, there was something about that was good for you, which is why you chose it, which is why you committed to it and why you were invested in it. So don't spend your time, energy, and resources in mulling over what went wrong.
Don't second guess the sacrifice, guys. You can't second guess the sacrifice because then you begin to question all of the years you spent doing it, right? And in that, you never see the good parts of it. You're always going to mull over the issues or the problems or, what I should have done and what I could have done and all these other kind of things. But there were seeds that were planted that may even sprout up after you walk away. And that's really all that it's going to still come back and bless you. There's still going to be a harvest from that.
One way or another. And the one thing that you have to understand is every fruit doesn't sprout in the same time frame, right? Like one of the more extreme versions of something that takes so long to show growth above ground is the bamboo, right? That's underground for years before it sprouts. But if and when it does, it has an exponential growth pattern, okay? So some of you are bamboos and some of you are apple trees, and that's fine. Be your fruit, but understand that in time, it will sprout. You will see the fruit of your labor. And I'm living by this, that I'm going to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. It was not for naught. But if I'm choosing to meditate on how it went wrong and why it wasn't worth my time and why I'm never going to see the good. It's a choice. And it's okay that you were good to people who weren't so great to you. Because that's who you are. And I'm learning that because my husband's trying to get me together on that part. Okay. Because I was like, don't make me out to be a fool. Like, don't make me be a version of myself to someone who didn't deserve it. And my husband was really like, what Jamila, that's who you are and that's your heart. And whether they were good to you in return or not, who you were to them saved them in a season that they needed to be saved. And I'm accepting that, because it is hard when you've been good to people who you feel have let you down, or there was an unmet expectation, and we're emotional about it. I mean, it is what it is, but that's why I say make sure you're surrounded by people who won't let you stay there, who will see beyond your emotionalism and will see behind the pain that you're probably experiencing in that moment, and can still point you in the direction of light and hope, and that there is something good coming on the back end of that.
I had a conversation with a brother earlier, and we were talking about, he had brought up a scripture in Matthew, talking about how it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven, right? And so we discussed that whole situation. But then one of the things that came up that really is still working with me, like it's still blessing me, is that the eye of the needle is actually a gate. It's not a physical eye of a needle. It's a gate in the city wall, but it's a smaller gate. And so it's more difficult for the camel to do it, because the camel wouldn't be able to have any of the bags on it.
Yeah, you got to take all the weight off.
All of the weight has to go, and the camel would actually have to be on its knees, crouch down, and go through the gate in order to get to the other side of the city, right? But on the other side of the gate is the city's there, right?
There.
And protection is there, and all of those kind of things. So one of the things that I think we have to realize is that sometimes we are going through the eye of the needle. And going through the eye of the needle, we're going to shed some stuff. Some stuff we're not going to be able to take it through, because the gate is just not wide enough for it all to go. And so every situation, every circumstance that we go through where we lose something, or where something changes, or where the season shifts, is not for bad all the time. It's for our good a lot of the time, right? And because on the other side of the needle gate is a wide open city.
And can I say something to that point? And don't be downtrodden by what you had to shed, because what you're going to need is on the other side of that. And I think that is sometimes why we still hold on to it, because we feel like if I let this go, I'm going to give up what I need. But no. What you needed on the other side of the gate is one thing. What you need on the other side of the gate awaits you. And it's okay to shed what does not belong, because now you make space for what awaits you on the other side. And you're going to have what you need, but are you willing to shed what you're comfortable with?
Let's take the money out of the rich man. Okay, let's just take rich in whatever you're doing, rich in thought, rich in my skill level, rich in my beauty, rich, whatever you're rich in. It's harder for that rich man to shed those things and go through the eye of the needle. I mean, go through that gate, right? Where you got to shed this stuff. And God says, if you would shed some of this stuff, I have a greater thing for you on the other side of the gate. I have something greater for you on the other side of the gate. So let's not just focus on the money of the rich man. We're all rich.
In something.
And if we would be okay enough, because he was able to check, I'm good at this, I'm good at this, I'm good at this. But when all is said and done, I'm not going to give up my money.
I'm not giving it up.
I'm not giving up this. And so many of us hold on to this thing that we're refusing to give up on this side of the gate. And that's why it's so hard for us to get into the kingdom, is because we're refusing to shed those things that will allow us, that will shrink us down enough. That's it. To be able to get through.
Because we don't want to be stripped of identity. We don't want to be stripped of identity. Yeah. It's like I'm identified by these things. I'm not taking off my coat of many colors. They know me by this. I'm not putting down my microphone. All they know is my voice. I'm not putting down. And sometimes that's what, back to the top of it, is like we don't want to give up what we are identified by, and it's the works sometimes. Then you have to understand that your authentic self is not rooted in your works. It is rooted in your purpose, and purpose sometimes is going to require a pivot. It's going to require a pivot. It's going to require the shedding of what's no longer warranted. It's tough. It's tough.
It's not an easy thing.
It's not.
It's not an easy thing. And sometimes you're caught off guard. You know, everything you're not able to plan or see it coming, right? Some things happen in a moment's notice, and you're forced to kind of deal with it in that moment and in that time period. And prayerfully, you're surrounded by people, or even not, you have enough wherewithal and enough. God has given us enough grace to successfully make it through those situations and be better on the other side of the gate.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And the final step of this process, because I know our time is far spent, but this is what happens when you get both of us. We gonna give you a little bit more. So if you can hang with us, just hang with us. It's just one more nugget that I want to talk to, and that is, after you've gone through all of those steps, the final step in all of this is you have to forgive, and you have to do it when you're ready. Because a forced apology and fabricated forgiveness is worse than just choosing to not forgive at all. So, at the point where you can get it within your heart and in your conscience to forgive, and when I say forgive, and I'm talking about relational and professional and whatever else investments, you have to forgive yourself for the mistakes that first forgive yourself. And I think this is just my personal opinion, you can weigh in. I think when we become better at learning how to forgive ourselves, we understand how to be more graceful with other people. I think when we don't know how to forgive ourselves and choose to see ourselves beyond our own mistakes, it's incredibly challenging to extend that grace to somebody else. Because if you don't believe that you're worthy of forgiveness, how do you truly extend it to somebody else? So deal with the fact that we all have our shortcomings. We are all falling short of the glory. Okay. We are all doing something in our imperfected state that sometimes stings and hurts another person. And you need to learn how to, first of all, acknowledge that you are imperfect, acknowledge what you've done to cause hurt to someone else, forgive yourself, and then ask for forgiveness, because we all need it. We've all done something that requires a level of forgiveness from somebody else, and do it in an authentic way. And if you're not to the place where you can do that, keep working at it so that you can get there. Don't stop working until you get there, because this really is the final step in life after breakup. After it's done, forgiveness has to happen, because if you don't, you just carry those negative feelings into whatever is to come.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, guys, I think, when all is said and done, that's the period at the end of the sentence. And if not, you keep putting commas and it continues to run on, right? And we keep creating these run-on sentences that flow into other areas of our life when we never expected it to.
Yeah.
And we're trying to identify what's wrong here, but we never deal with the root of that unforgiveness over there. And so then we're in counseling, which is okay, but we're in counseling trying to identify it, and we're having to dig up 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Is because it just became a run-on sentence. We never put a period in it and move past that part. And so I think that's where we one of the things that Jamila and I had to do, we had to put some periods and stuff, right? Because we just kept adding run-on sentences. We just kept adding commas to situations. And when we, even sometimes we said we put a period in it, it still would come up in the next chapter. We would finish this chapter, but then you know what?
I still want to talk about that.
I'm still, yeah. Let's bring this up again, because this is still
Roll
a
the
good.
tape back.
Yeah. Let's roll that back. Roll that beautiful bean footage. Yeah, but and so it's worth it. It's worth it to put a period in it, to forgive, and to genuinely move on.
Yeah, genuinely. And I think, and as you guys know, we're never going to talk about whether Aaron is on Thursday with Jamila or not, or if it's an independent segment. It's never going to be a discussion about what we read about. It's going to be a discussion what we've been called to live through. And so we're telling you this because we've had to experience it. And we are in a season where we truly get to enjoy the fruit of the work. We get to enjoy the fruit of the shedding. We get to enjoy the fruit of forgiveness. We get to enjoy it, because for so long, the commas were shaping our realities to where we couldn't see the forest from the trees. And so you've got to decide, like, this version is no longer applicable. I'm saying goodbye to this. I'm freeing myself up for what's next. And there truly is a next. for you. No matter what it is that you've been called to walk away from this season, no matter what it is that you're called to, maybe it's just a pause. Maybe it's not a full on breakup. Maybe it's a separation. But whatever the season is calling you to, yield to it so that you can really become a better person and fully enjoy what's to come.
Guys, when Christ died on the cross, he breached the gap between God and man. And so when he breached the gap, we no longer have to create one. And so if we choose to allow ourselves to bridge, he's already created the way for us. He's already created the opportunity for us. It's because he breached the gap. And so we no longer have this separation that we have to live in, right? We can be whole, we can be healed, we can be free, we can live in the grace that he's provided, and we can enjoy it, right?
We can enjoy life.
We can enjoy it.
You can enjoy life. So it's a choice. The choice is yours. For your journal entry, I really want you guys to really spend some time thinking about, what are the steps that were identified tonight that I need to spend a little bit more time working on so that I really can enjoy the next, so that I can enjoy life on the other side of the gate. Really, and be thoughtful in it. Don't rush it and take all the time that you need. Like maybe you can only talk about one portion of it per day or one portion per week, whatever it is. I am an advocate for holistic living. Okay. So whatever you need, and if there's an area in which you're lacking, maybe you don't have an accountability partner. Maybe you don't have that. There are so many resources available now, you guys, at our fingertips. Okay. So let's do away with the excuses and really strive for the results in this season. If we want 2021 to be different, it's on us to do something different. Okay. Love you guys. Have a good night.
Peace.
Bye.